Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about managing your mental health, especially as a new contractor in this current climate. Now, I'm talking about this because obviously it's Mental Health Week for those of you who are watching during this time, and it's really important to understand how we can better be in a position where we're not feeling like this person, okay? Stressed and really seeing things a certain way and being affected and feeling anxious and feeling burnt out and feeling overwhelmed and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to try and tackle some of this stuff because this is something that I've experienced myself. It's not an easy thing to deal with. So essentially, here are some things that you're going to learn. I'm going to cover some of these topics so you get a better understanding, the common pitfalls, etc., etc. I don't need to read through all of this stuff. Now, let's focus on why managing mental health is really important. Why is this important? Well, the reality of the situation is that if we're able to better manage our mental health, we're going to be more productive. We're going to be happier. Our well-being is going to have a good sense of positivity. We're not necessarily going to be in situations where we don't feel satisfied or whatever it may be. Think about the times where your mental health has been low. You just don't feel like doing anything. You don't want to talk to anyone. You don't really want to be around anyone. It's because you're feeling this way. And as a contractor, sometimes this can happen because you don't have that sense of stability, so to speak, that sense of security that has falsely been thrown at us when we're working a 9 to 5. Not to say a 9 to 5 is not a good thing. It's just saying it's a different way of looking at things. And so these are all things that are positive when it comes to maintaining a good sense of mental health. Now, if you haven't done a mental first aider course as an advocate or as a first aider, I would definitely recommend that you do it. You can check out, different government websites that offer this training, sometimes for free, level 2 or level 3, I believe. And yeah, you can learn more about this stuff because I think it's really important. And I don't think it's focused enough on when it comes to contractors. So let's keep it moving. What are some of the common challenges that are faced by these different types of people? Well, like I said before, there are situations where, you may have a contract for 6 months and then all of a sudden, they tell you that actually we're going to have to pull the plug because we don't have budget anymore, which is really bad. That's scandalous, by the way. There are situations where, of course, obviously you may have your contract end early and you're in a time that is not opportunistic, it's threatening, and therefore it takes a very long time for you to get a contract, so to speak. It may be a situation where, obviously your management at the time or the person who's, the hiring manager has a toxic relationship with you, or they're not very good at leading or managing, or there's so much complexity and ambiguity that's within the space. It's difficult for you to manage. You may be in a situation where you've transitioned into a space where your finances are really poor actually, and you have to juggle between managing finances, making money, but also finding something as well. If you actually get my independent consultant course, you can listen to somebody who I interview who speaks about that very thing and see how they were able to do it as well. So there are also situations where you may feel isolated. If you don't have anyone around you who's a contractor, if you don't really know many contractors, or you're quite introverted by nature, then of course it's going to be very difficult for you to actually navigate within a space because it's really important to speak to other people. And so thinking about this, I'd like to talk about a little bit of my story. I've spoken about my story before, and again, I won't go over it too tough, but essentially, I've gone from happy to angry to happy to angry to happy to angry. And essentially, for me personally, I came into the contracting space when I was previously working for the NHS for a specific organization that isn't around anymore, and I was extremely stressed. I was extremely sort of overstretched, and I was the go-to person across the country for dealing with this big transformation that we're dealing with. And so I made a decision to essentially hand in my notice and move into the space of contracting. And I did this because, again, I felt like there was something in me that was pushing me to do something different. I had to be bigger, badder, and bolder for myself. And I spoke to loads of different individuals who got me into a space of understanding how to move into contracting. I spoke to other contractors, I spoke to accountants, I spoke to agents as well. This gave me a good, strong understanding. And so moving into my first contract, it was fine. There wasn't any real issues. I was kind of dealing with things pretty well. Moving into my second contract, that's when it got crazy stressful because there were high demands and high expectations of me that I fulfilled, but was stretching me to a different level. There was a situation even in my first contract at the end of it where we had two consultancies just leave us on one day, and that meant like 16 individuals were gone, and overnight I became the lead and the person dealing with new staff, new permanent members of staff. So different expectations there in terms of leading on this transformation. And this was all to do with COVID as well. So it was high pressure stakes. In the second, third and fourth contract, which was with the same people, it was stressful. And the reason why it was stressful is because the leadership was toxic, and not my direct leadership. I had a good relationship with them, although sometimes they could get stressy. But at the same time, it was a situation where, they wanted above and beyond and it didn't exist, or they kept on changing their mind, or there were many iterations of stuff that needed to be created. As far as I know, things have been sorted in that department, but I don't really care anymore. But the point being made is I felt overstretched to the point where I handed in my notice. And it was a strategic move because I had enough money to do that. But two, it was a situation for me to start focusing on my portfolio career. So start focusing on my business and building that sort of practice as well. And so that gives you a bit of an idea. There are situations where we feel like we can't escape. As a contractor, you can, and this is the beauty of it. But sometimes you're in situations where it doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like you can escape because you still have that 9-to-5 permanent employee mentality, when really a lot of this stuff is temporary. So let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving so we have more of a perspective. So what are the key signs of mental health issues? Well, there are many key signs. What can we think of? So when it comes to mental health issues, sometimes we may be extremely avoidant. I remember when I was in the situation with this specific person at the NHS, I started to avoid certain meetings because I was like, I don't want the drama. We've battled it out. We've warred each other. So I'm trying to just, create peace. I want my peace bubble, as my friend Nashe says all the time. So there are those situations. There are also situations where you may constantly have low mood. Again, coming back to that situation, and I use that situation even though I was in a permanent space because it was similar to what I experienced in some of these other places. In fact, I'll use a contracting space as an example. With my good friend who I was working with in this contracting space, we would both talk on a regular basis. No one really knew, but essentially, she was my confidant and I was her confidant, and we could share and express how we were feeling in the moment because no one else could really understand. It was a unique experience, especially because of the high pressures of COVID. So that's a bit of a clue in terms of how you can battle this stuff. You need someone there. And so sometimes you can have low mood, and that is affected mainly because you may be confused, there may be complexity, there may be ambiguity, and there may be overwhelm as well. But you need to have somebody who's there. Sometimes you may have erratic behavior. You may lash out. Now, I didn't necessarily lash out, but I know my direct sort of like lead lashed out at certain stages because it was just getting ridiculous, and fair play to them. But at the same time, that doesn't look professional and you because we're coming as professional consultants. Okay. You do have decreased productivity and performance. It's common sense. If you're in a space where you don't want to be there anymore, you're going to be avoidant, so to speak. You're not going to necessarily want to be in a room and all that kind of stuff there. And obviously, you may fall into a space of being constantly anxious and have excessive worry, so to speak. You're just like, oh my gosh, are they going to pick me? Am I going to have to do this? All this kind of stuff there. It is not nice. It is a horrible feeling. And so we need to do certain things, okay? We need to make sure that number one, we do the basics well. What do I mean by this? Self-care is not selfish. It is not selfish. Let me make this even bigger. It is not a selfish thing. If you focus on yourself, if you focus on making sure that you have rituals and practices that enable you to feel a certain way so that you can do certain things, then you're in a better position than rather being worried and feeling this lack of meaning and sense of purpose and passion. All these things are very important. So I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. So what I mean by this is do the basics well when it comes to sleep. Stick to a consistent schedule. So in essence, you want to make sure that you're going to sleep at the right time, at the same time, by the way, and you're also making sure that you're waking up at the same time. Why is this important? From a circadian rhythm standpoint, it's important because it keeps your mood and your level of well-being at a certain state. It's not all over the place. The body likes routine, but it likes routine so much that it tries to take you out of that routine based on attractiveness and short-term gains. You have to think about long-term. How are you going to feel in the long term if you stick to a good, solid routine? The bed thing, do not underlook it. That's making sure that you're, not looking at screen time at least an hour before, not drinking too much water before you go to sleep. Maybe you want to exercise before you go to sleep. It knocks you out a bit. Do you know what I mean? You have that nice sort of like bath to chill you down, all that kind of stuff there. Make sure you don't eat crazy amounts just before you go to sleep as well. There's also thinking about entertainment and games and TV and all this kind of stuff. You want to make sure that you are steer clear of that before you go to sleep. But when you wake up, you're refreshed as can be. Maybe you need to open a window. Maybe you need to make sure that the room is tidy. Do whatever you need to do to make sure that the routine's on point. The next thing you need to do is to make sure that you have regular breaks. Sorry, I said that kind of wrong. So what I mean by that is, rather than having 11 or 12 meetings throughout the day, try to stick to 6 if you can, or 4. Put in stuff in your diary so that it is focused on doing some of the certain things. Number 1, delivery. Delivery is very important, of course. That's how we get measured. Number 2, you need thinking and strategy time. And number 3, you need time to meet with other people and go over some stuff. Those 3 things are very important. So you need to block that stuff out in your diary. Very, very important stuff. You also want to make sure that your diet is decent. It doesn't have to be crazy on point, but it needs to be decent. I'll give you an example. I remember back in the day when I randomly had Skittles, and I'd have them at different times of the day, had them before I go to sleep. I was awake. I was like, oof. I was awake. I was buzzing. I couldn't go to sleep. Food can have that effect even on a minute level. So if you're having things that you're intolerant to, or if you're having things that are going to affect your sleep or your mood, do not have them. Minimize them. And if you're going to sacrifice those things, maybe take some enzymes like lactase enzymes or whatever it may, lactase enzymes, to help you break down lactose if you're lactose intolerant, or replace Skittles with grapes as an example. Think of ways to set up your environment in a solid way. You should definitely go for walks if you can, because walks are a way for you to see the environment, take in the ambience, breathe, do all these different things, cultivate your creativity as well. So here are some of the things that can help you in this situation. The next thing to consider is having the right support system. I can't underplay this enough. Support is so key. I remember during a time where things were very difficult for me, and I had my good friends Lily, Katrina, and Chima. They were fantastic. All contractors, all in similar situations, all felt burnt out or overwhelmed or had this level of mental health that they couldn't manage. And having the conversations with them individually, they don't know each other, but having the conversations with them individually was golden, because they were going through the detail the same way I was thinking about it or experiencing it. And so you're not going crazy. And so if you're on a foundation of knowing that you're not going crazy, then you feel a bit better, because you're like, okay, cool, it's not just me. What can I now start to do, maybe together with this person, in order for me to overcome this spell that I'm going through? And those expressions, I always say expression is a great remedy. It's a really good way of overcoming different situations. So find people who you can express things to, okay? For those of you who are mental health first aiders, you'll know about the CHIME model and, finding help where you can. So look into that sort of stuff. Now, building a strong support system, again, does some of this stuff. And it's very simple things. Like, you just need to do it on a regular basis. Just quick touch points. I mean, for me, it was phone call conversations or video calls, whatever it may be. But really talk about the different things that you're experiencing, the challenges, the successes, all of this kind of stuff plays into helping you overcome your mental health spells. Not easy, but as possible. And this is what you have to try and understand. It is possible to get out of this spell. And if it's in an environment that is not healthy for you, get out of this situation. I'll be the first person to admit, don't be afraid to do it. When I handed in my notice back in September of 22, is one of the best things I needed to do, because it was getting to a point where it was getting ridiculous. As a contractor, it is your right to leave a space if it doesn't fit for you. That's why you're a contractor. Some people may be worried and scared of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get the money, do this and that. That's fair enough. I understand it, my friend. But we're going to move into that section now. So when it comes to money, you need to ensure there is a level of stability, and you need to set those standards. I was reading the book E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber. I think the first time I read it was back in I want to say 15, 16 or 17. I don't remember, but it's a fantastic book. And it talks about developing your primary aims in life. What are you trying to achieve from life? What is this big thing that you're trying to do? Why do you want to go into contracting? Why do you want to develop a portfolio career? Why do you want to be a non-executive director? I'm asking myself all these questions. Why do you want to be a coach? You have to answer these questions. What is the big sort of like passion and I guess the driver pushing you into this sense of purpose? Answer these questions because it will help you create standards which link to money. Money is very important because money creates opportunities and makes things happen. So you need to think to yourself, why do I want these things? So how am I going to create sort of structures financially in order for this to happen? So some of the things that I do is, number one, I make sure that I have a review at least on a monthly or bi-monthly basis in terms of my money situation. I use things like Money Dashboard, if you know of what that is. And that's essentially a thing that integrates with all your banks. And you can see your trends and behaviors when it comes to spending your money and the money that's coming in as well. So really good stuff. Get the classic version, not the neon version. Number two, if I'm in a contracting position, I'm going to try and make sure that I build an emergency fund, and I'm going to try and save, at least my day rate every week if I can. So if I'm making on average, the average sort of like day rate within the UK is 550. If I'm saving 550 every single week, then that ends up being what, £2,200 every single month. That's great. Of course I'm going to save that. Someone's, monthly salary. So I'm going to try and do that stuff. Now, I may not get that exact money, but if I can, get that in terms of the gross amount, then perfectly fine. You also need to make sure you communicate your plans with your partner if you can, because again, they're going to be affected. They're going to be affected at the end of the day. Try to communicate your plans with them so they're aware of what's happening. If you're in a situation where you have to pay off debt, try and pay off that debt as soon as possible. And if you can't, I'm not telling you what to do, but sometimes you have to pay minimum payment for a bit until you get that thing, that fix, in order for you to pay that thing off very, very quickly. If you want more information on the finances bit, then check out my finance video where you can get more of that stuff. You also want to make sure that you get the right insurances as well. So what do I mean by this? The right insurances include business insurance, life insurance, health insurance, thinking about wills and all that kind of stuff there. I've probably missed one, but you're smart enough, you can figure this out for yourself. What structures do you have in place in order for you to be in the right position? Really, really important. Rest is best. I mean, it rhymes, so you're going to remember it. Rest is best. And sometimes as high ambitious, high performing individuals, we think, we'll rest later. We'll rest when we're dead. We'll rest when we're asleep. Do you really want to put that to the test? There are some people who have worked so hard that they've killed themselves, unfortunately. And so what does this look like? Again, you have to have a schedule. Schedule in time for relaxation. I know on Fridays throughout the evening, I have do not book any meetings. And it's like 4 or 5 hours long or whatever it may be. That's my time to just chill. If I'm going out, great. If I'm not, great. It's all good. Make sure that you engage with other people. Sometimes people give you energy and a lease of life. They give you that sense of vitality. And so with that in mind, that's a form of rest in a way. That's a form of mental rest because you're just enjoying life, so to speak. Spend quality time with loved ones. If this is a headache, then don't do it. But if it isn't a headache, spend time with them. Think of some fun activities to do, stimulating activities to do. You don't want to overwork yourself. You just want to have fun and spend time with them as well. Allow yourself to disconnect. So if you're in a place that is more natural by nature, then go for walks. I advocate walks, man, because it really stimulates your mind and it puts you in a position of creativity and rejuvenation. And also, you want to make sure that you do some activities that stimulate your body, so to speak. So maybe this is exercise, maybe this is yoga, maybe this is cooking. Whatever form of rest you decide to do, the point I'm making is you have to be as present as possible and put yourself in a state of complete rest or flow. Flow is basically feeling present. Flow could be doing the things that you love. Flow could mean so many different things, but it feels great. So be in those situations if you can. You also want to make sure that you're creating aggressive boundaries. This is really important. Learn to say no. Go for No. It's a book. It's a great book. You can check it out. It's all about how you can confidently say no. And you should focus on getting as many no's as possible, or say as many no's as possible in order for you to get more yeses in your life. So let's break this down in a bit more detail. Be clear about your contractual sort of like rights and responsibilities. Very, very important. So when your notice period is, when you can work and when you shouldn't work, who you report to, when your timesheet operates and all that kind of stuff there, how much money that you make, what you're allowed to do in terms of overtime or no overtime. Are you in the conduct regulations? These are all things to think about and to be aware of, because if you're not aware of these things, then you could be cheated, my friend. You could be cheated. We don't want to do this stuff. You also want to clearly communicate your expectations from the beginning. So let them know you're a professional. Let them know that you don't do this craziness where you're working crazy hours unnecessarily. And if you knew this was going to be the thing from the beginning, then you've put yourself in a pickle, my friend. Unless you're confident enough and you're valuable enough to let them know this is not what you do, even though you knew you're going to get yourself into this space, then that's on you. That's totally on you. So think about this. You want to keep track of your hours, okay? Even if you do a timesheet or whatever it may be, keep track of your hours, because even if you're submitting things, whether this is on public sector resourcing or another agency, whatever it may be, you have your record, okay? So there's some templates that you can create for yourself that will enable you to keep this stuff. Again, avoid any additional work. I spoke about that before, and make sure that you put activities into your calendar. Sometimes I can be lazy with this, but I know when I do this, I actually do the work when need be. But two, people know not to mess around with me. Sometimes people will take the biscuit, but fam, if you do it enough times, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say something. That's the beauty of being in this position. You owe no one nothing apart from producing results. That's it. That is it. And so let's keep it moving. Let's keep this moving. So moving on from this, I want to summarize this in a beautiful way. I say this, but am I really going to do this? The point being made is mental health is dire, okay? It is something that a lot of people are suffering from. So I want to be clear here. Mental health is a spectrum. You got good health and bad health, but this is mental illness I'm talking about. I'm referring to burnout. I'm referring to anxiety. I'm resulting to talking about low mood or depression. All these different things are things that affect the way we think and behave emotionally and all this kind of stuff there. And so things that you need to do is to recognize your value as a person, learn to say no, make sure you have the right level of routine, speak to the right people, ensure that you have the right financial acumen and structures to support your mental health, and also make sure that your boundaries are extremely clear. So these are some high level summary thoughts. If there's anything in this that you think I have missed, let me know. I want to know, is your mental health affected right now because of some of the stuff that we're seeing currently in this current climate, especially with this cost of living, this AI revolution, and the fact that the market is getting a bit slow at the moment? Let me know your thoughts. And again, I have to do this. I have to make sure you guys know. If you want to, again, you're not ready for contracting and you want to get into a space where you want to improve your job prospects, then you should get my Secure the Job course. It's cheap as chips, and you can check it out below for more information. If you're somebody who wants to actually take that next level, you want to quit your role and transition into the contracting space, then the independent consultant is for you, specifically for people within the UK. Again, if you want to have a chat, there's also an opportunity to have a chat with me as well, but it's getting very difficult because I got a lot going on in my life right now, and your boy's trying to succeed. But look, thank you very much for checking out this video. And again, if you want to see more videos around life management, portfolio careers, and positive psychology, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.